This is the Prophecy Project. Understanding the times, the nations in military conflicts, with Bible teacher and author Alan Bonk.
Welcome. This is the third video in a new series of prophecy videos. It is now 2022 and things are changing all around us. By that I mean the world, its plagues and governments are going out of control. This is a study of the second book of Ezra, which is also called For Ezra. The videos are divided into individual chapters from the book. Some chapters will be longer than others. This one is a short one. Some have a lot of personal information and questions from Ezra himself. However, most of the chapters are still prophetic in nature. I have given each chapter a simple title from something I found in that chapter, which I'm giving to you. Chapter 3 is Zion, Captive in Babylon. This chapter introduces us to the man Ezra. The book of Ezra in the Old Testament does not reveal any personal insight into Ezra himself, but starting in chapter 3 of For Ezra, our book, we begin to get some understanding of him. He turns out to be a very passionate man for his people and for his devotion to God. It turns out that he is willing to talk to God from his heart, and when something doesn't make sense to him, he says so. Now, God is not really offended by this because his heart is towards God. This chapter starts in Babylon shortly after Ezra and the children of Israel were taken to Babylon, after Jerusalem was made desolate. Ezra is not in Babylon as he recounts the events because he says he was in Babylon. He is looking back. Chapter 3, verse 1. In the 30th year after the ruin of the city, I was in Babylon, and lay troubled on my bed. And my thought came up over my heart, for I saw the desolation of Zion, and the wealth of them that dwelt at Babylon, and how my spirit was sore moved, so that I began to speak words full of fear to the Most High, and said, O Lord, who bearest rule, thou spakest at the beginning when thou didst plant the earth, and that thyself alone, and commandest the people, and gavest a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and was made a living soul before thee. And thou didst lead him into paradise, which thy right hand had planted, before ever the earth came forth. And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointedst death in him, and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, peoples, kindreds, out of number. And every people walked in their own will, and did wonderful things before thee, and despised thy commandments. And again, in the process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwelt on the world, and destroyest them. And it came to pass in every of them, that as death was to Adam, so was the flood to these. Nevertheless, one of them thou leftest, namely Noah, and his household, of whom came all righteous men. And it happened that when they dwelt upon the earth, began to multiply, and had gotten them many children, and were a great people, they began again to be more ungodly than the first. Now, when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou didst choose thee a man from among them, whose name was Abraham. Him thou lovest, and unto him only showest thy will, and madest an everlasting covenant with him, promising him that thou wouldest never forsake his seed. And unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac thou gavest Jacob and Esau. As for Jacob, thou didst choose him to thee, and put by Esau. And so Jacob became a multitude. And it came to pass that when thou leadest his seed out of Egypt, thou broughtest him up to Mount Sinai. And bowing down the heavens, thou didst set fast the earth, movest the whole world, and madest the depths to tremble, and troubled the men of that age. And thy glory went through 4 gates of fire, and of earthquake, and of wind, and of cold, that thou mightest give the law unto the seed of Jacob, and diligence unto the generation of Israel. And yet tookest thou not away from them a wicked heart, that thy law might bring forth fruit in them. For the first Adam, bearing a wicked heart, transgressed, and was overcome, and so be all they that are born of him. Thus infirmity was made permanent, and the law in the heart of the people with the malignity of the root, so that the good departed away, and the evil abode still. So the times passed away, and the years were brought to an end. Then didst thou raise up a servant called David, whom thou commandest to build a city unto thy name, and to offer incense and oblations unto thee therein. When this was done many years, then they that inhabited the city forsook thee, and in all things did ever as Adam and all his generations had done, for they also had a wicked heart. And so thou gavest thy city over into the hands of thine enemies. This first portion of Ezra's prayer is basically a legal brief. He is laying out the entire case or suit in prayer to God. Most of us do this very same thing, just not so lengthy. We explain to God why our prayer should be answered in the affirmative. Ezra was on his bed when he began to get upset with the condition of Israel and their position in Babylon. He is making suit to God. He is complaining. Verse 28. Are their deeds any better that inhabit Babylon, that they should therefore have dominion over Zion? For when I came hither and had seen impieties without number, then my soul saw many evildoers in this 30th year, so that my heart failed me. For I have seen how thou sufferest or allow them sinning, and how thou hast spared wicked doers, and hath destroyed thy people, and hath preserved thine enemies, and hath not signified it. I do not remember how this way may be left. Are they then of Babylon better than they of Zion? Or is there any other people that knoweth thee besides Israel? Or what generation hath so believed thy covenants as Jacob? And yet their reward appeareth not, and their labor hath no fruit. For I have gone here and there through the heathen, and see that they flow in wealth, and think not upon thy commandments. Weigh thou therefore our wickedness now in the balance, and theirs also that dwell on the earth. And so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel. Or when was it that they which dwelled upon the earth have not sinned in thy sight? Or what people have so kept thy commandments? Thou shalt find that Israel by name hath kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. I have underlined in the text above the specific questions or complaints that Ezra feels are unfair to Israel. Point 1, from verse 28. It basically states that the Babylonians have sinned too. Why then do they have dominion over Zion? Now, Israel is under discipline from God. Babylon is not, or at least not now. Point 2. He says that the Babylonians have been preserved while Zion has been destroyed. Verse 31. Are they then of Babylon better than they of Zion? No, of course not. They are not better. Babylon will be judged at the time that God chooses. He knows best when to do it. Point 3, verse 32. Is there any other people that knoweth thee besides Israel? As a nation, no. But there are individuals who do. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, for one, God had to deal with his pride. Point 4, verse 32. What generation has so believed thy covenants as Jacob? Well, no other nation has been given God's covenants. Jacob, by default, is the only nation that has the covenants. Point 5, verse 34. Your name will be found in no other place but Zion. Not really. That's not true. Cyrus and Nebuchadnezzar both knew him, and that is Persia and Babylon. Point 6, verse 35. When was it that they which dwelt upon the earth have not sinned in thy sight? He's right. There have never been a time when men did not sin. However, God is concerned with man's reconciliation. Through blood, he covers sins. Ezra's summary statement, verse 36. Thou, God, make a finding, that Israel by name hath kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. The heathen were not given the Torah, nor the precepts. Only Israel was given the law. It was Israel which did not keep them. That's why they are captive in Babylon. I'm not really able, from my studio here, to feel the anguish and frustration that Ezra was experiencing, which contributed to his questions. But God, in chapter 4 of this book, will send an angel named Uriel to Ezra to sort out the problems that Ezra feels. He goes directly to the heart of Ezra's problem. Chapter 4 is a continuation from this chapter, chapter 3. And this is the end of chapter 3. You can go to the next video in the series to continue to chapter 4, or you can view any other chapter you wish to. Thank you very much for watching.
This was only one session of many. Be sure to continue watching the Prophecy Project series. If you would like to read more information on this subject, you can find Alan's books on Amazon.com.